Hello, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, a new movement is harassing Jews online. Ukraine arrested terrorists who plan to attack synagogues. And we'll tell you what Israeli paramedics are doing for the Ramadan holiday. I'm Denise Wood here with the latest news in Israel. Ukraine's state security service has just announced that it arrested a French citizen who planned to launch 15 attacks on Jewish synagogues and other locations in France. The attacks were planned to take place during the Euro 2016 football championship, which begins on June 10th.
Насправді Службі безпеки вдалося попередити серію з 15 терористичних акцій, які планувалися на території Франції напередодні та під час проведення чемпіонату з футболу, чемпіонату Європи, який має розпочатись 10 червня 2016 року. В грудні 2015 року нам стало відомо про те, що в Україну прибув громадянин Франції, який під виглядом волонтерської діяльності почав встановлювати контакти з рядом представників військових формувань на сході нашої держави і обіцяв привозити волонтерську допомогу, обіцяв привозити спорядження і багато чого іншого. Але в процесі подальшого спілкування він почав проявляти інтерес до того, чи можна в Україні закупити зброю, вибухівки і інші засоби ураження.
USB head Vasily Grytsak says the 25-year-old suspect has been on the authorities' radar since coming to the region in 2015. He pretended to be a humanitarian volunteer, but was caught trying to acquire weapons of mass destruction from armed groups in the east, where Ukraine has been battling pro-Russia separatists.
Громадянину Франції було передано 5 автоматів Калашникова, більше 5 тисяч набоїв, 2 протитанкові гранатомети РПГ, 18 пострілів до них, 125 кг тротилу, 100 детонаторів, 20 балаклав і інші речі.
After being arrested as part of a sting operation, the French national was found to be in possession of an arsenal. Over 5,000 rounds of ammunition, 2 RPG anti-tank grenade launchers, 125 kilograms of dynamite, 100 detonators, and other weapons. In addition to the synagogues, the suspected far-right-wing activist is believed to have intended to attack mosques, tournament buildings, and tax offices in France. If you use internet platforms like Twitter or Reddit, you've probably noticed that people have been marking the names of Jewish users to target them for online harassment. But now Twitter users are fighting back, and you'll want to hear how. It's unclear who started the anti-Semitic harassment, but some are saying it's linked to radical supporters of presumptive Republican U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump. While anti-Semitism certainly isn't new, this new online harassment movement started when online neo-Nazis began enclosing Jewish names with triple parentheses to identify them as Jewish and mark them as targets for harassment. Around 2,500 users were even using an app called Echo since 2014, which automatically marks common Jewish names. Google removed the extension from its online stores just a few days ago, but users say that's not enough. Regardless of who started the anti-Semitic movement, people are now hitting back. And Jewish-American journalist Jeffrey Goldberg of The Atlantic and the senior writer of the tablet magazine, Yair Rosenberg, just launched a viral response to the threat. After being the focus of online abuse for years, Goldberg decided to defy the haters and put the parentheses around his own name on Twitter. Rosenberg joined the trend and then called on his followers to raise awareness about anti-Semitism in a show of solidarity with harassed Jews. And people definitely listened. His message was retweeted over 1 million times. And now, many Jews are outing themselves, but they're not the only ones. Muslims are also participating along with Christians and even Hindus, who are all voicing their support for those who are confronting the white supremacists. Rosenberg and Goldberg are also thanking users for supporting the movement and say it feels empowering to hit back at the rampant anti-Semitism that's plaguing the internet. Since the end of the Gaza war in summer 2014, Israel has been in a hostile standoff with the Hamas terror group. There are occasionally rockets from Gaza and Israeli retaliation, but little is known about what Hamas is trying to do. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz sat down with Palestinian affairs expert Gershon Baskin to talk about Hamas and what's actually going on in Gaza.
From each round of conflict, what we've had is a consolidation of the power in the hands of the military wing in Hamas. The Palestinian leadership in Hamas, the political leadership, the echelon, Khalid Mashal outside, and the leadership inside Gaza has become increasingly pragmatic, not moderate, pragmatic in their recognition that they can't function without Israel. As you said, the border to Egypt is closed. During 2015, the Rafah crossing to Egypt was open for 25 days the entire year. So they need to be pragmatic vis-a-vis Israel. They need water, they need electricity, they need food, medical supplies, everything basically is dependent on Israel. They don't have the tunnels anymore from which they were profiting an estimated $140 million a month during the high time when there were 1,000 smuggling tunnels working. Everything was in Gaza. Cars, trucks, livestock, food, everything came through the tunnels in Egypt, and they're all closed down now. And not only is the economy stagnant and damaged because of that, Hamas has no money to pay their salaries. So the political leadership wants to be more pragmatic, is working toward reconciliation with Fatah. Even some of them are talking about paying the price that Fatah has demanded, which is the employment of Palestinian Authority forces in Gaza along the Rafah crossing. This also demanded the Egyptians. The military wing absolutely refuses to that. And despite the fact that they don't have money to pay their salaries, they refuse to give in to any of the demands of the political wing. They don't want any direct relations with Israel. They don't want any kind of negotiations with Israel. These guys, the core of them are people who were freed in the Shalit prisoner exchange in 2011, and they are the most extreme elements within Hamas. Some of them are trying to drag Hamas back into an alliance with Iran, although I'm not sure how that would like, because Iran is demanding that they support Assad in Syria, and this is something that goes against also on the Sunni-Shiite split. But the relationship is very challenged within the movement today between the political wing and the military wing, but the military wing call the shots. They have all the power, they make all the decisions. This is why I laughed at Lieberman's statement about Hania delivering the two bodies of the Israeli soldiers and the two civilians, because even if Hania wanted to, he doesn't have the power to implement it.
At least we're hoping to have a quiet summer as far as Gaza is concerned.
It doesn't
this summer.
seem that anyone has the interest right now for an explosive summer. Hamas is rebuilding its forces. They are using what little money they have to build more rockets and tunnels, and they keep talking about surprises that they will have for Israel in the next round, but they talk about the next round. They don't talk about a long-term extended ceasefire. It's when and if. It's not if, it's when, and they make a statement that they're planning for it and working for it. The Palestinian issue has become, in my view, for Israel an existential issue. The question is, how long can we continue to call ourselves the democratic nation state of the Jewish people when we're almost 50 years of occupation with a binational reality between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea under one state? And this is a reality that has nothing to do with demographics. It has to do with whether or not Israel, in fact, can be the democratic nation state of the Jewish people and continue to occupy the Palestinian people. This is existential now for us, and I think that more and more people around the world are coming to that conclusion, and I would venture to say that more and more people in the right wing of Israel are coming to that conclusion, that it's simply no longer viable for us to continue this binational reality between the river and the sea.
You've probably seen the movie Schindler's List, about a man who saved Jews from the Holocaust. Well, it turns out there's a diplomat who's known as the Japanese Schindler, and one Israeli city is naming a street after him. While working as his nation's vice consul to Lithuania during the Second World War, Kiyun Sugihara saved the lives of an estimated 6,000 desperate European Jews by issuing them exit visas against his government's orders. He wrote the life-saving documents day and night during July of 1940. When his office was closed the following month, he frantically continued to thrust the transit papers out of his train window and apologized to those waiting on the platform as it pulled away. Within the following year, nearly all of the Jews in Lithuania were murdered by the Nazis and their allies. One of those he helped to escape explained that the vice consul gave out as many visas as he could, even though the recipients had no idea where they would flee.
He was not particular about them having a visa to go on, because that's a principle. Before you give a transit visa, the traveler has to have a destination to go past the transit country. But Mr. Sugihara was not particular that he gave transit visas freely, and we got our visas for continuing later in Japan.
Sugihara's son is in Israel to meet with the mayor of Netanya to celebrate the city naming a street after his father. Nobuki Sugihara also spoke to the families of Jews who were saved by the visas and expressed gratitude for Israel's recognition of his father.
I thank you very much for the street by my father's name. My father once showed refugees the way to escape from Holocaust. And this street now show young people the future next to this very meaningful planetarium.
Even though Sujihara has often been nicknamed the Japanese Oscar Schindler, his actions saved 5 times as many people. He was forced to resign from Tokyo's foreign ministry for his defiance on behalf of the Jews, and sadly died in obscurity in 1986. But his actions didn't go unnoticed by Israel, and the new Netanya Street aims to honor his contribution to the Jewish people. When you think of Israel, you probably think of things like the startup nation and a powerful military. But have you ever stopped to ask, who are the Israeli people and what makes Israeli society so different and successful? Tal Mendelbaum Ben Moshe is a social psychologist who spent years studying how people connect and what makes up the fabric of a society. She's here with us today to tell us more. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Definitely. Now, you're a psychologist that studies human interaction. How has that influenced how you see Israelis in Israel?
Well, it is very interesting, and I think it's interesting as an Israeli to have this perspective of looking at society and how everything, comes together. And one of my, inner questions, my personal questions that I've had since childhood is really about how the world sees Israel, how much attention Israel attracts from the media. We're always at the center. There's always a focus on Israel and what happens here and what doesn't happen here. So I asked myself, how does such a small country, such a young country, attract so much attention? And so walking around with this question really makes you see things that you wouldn't see otherwise. Sure. And so one of my conclusions has been that there's really something about this nation. There's something about the people here that we need to look at, that we need to research to understand why it is that we're the focus in the world. So I'd like to share with you some of these things that I've come across that
Sure, we'd love to hear what you found.
That help me see Israel not the way the media sees it, not through the media's eyes, but really the authentic Israel or the real Israel.
And these are the human interactions, correct? This is what we're looking at, really. Israelis interacting with other Israelis.
Well, yeah, because that's what really makes up a society, right? That's what that's the fabric,
sure.
And that's the face that we have towards the world, and that's what people are looking to. We're always, we're always asked to uphold certain values in the eyes of the world, and why? Why is it the Israeli nation, the Jewish people that are expected of so much? And so, looking at the Israeli people, you don't really see anything different on the outside, but if you look a little deeper, and if you're really willing to venture into the authentic Israeli life, then I think some of these secrets begin to open up. Definitely. So I'd like to tell you of a project that I've come across, sure. A radio initiative actually, that's called Israel Story. It's a team of young Israelis that decided that they want to show Israel in its authentic way. Through radio, and it began as a kind of podcast for family and friends, and then it was picked up by Galei Tzahal, which is one of Israel's largest channels. And basically what they do is they just interview regular Israelis with regular stories, and they bring it out in such a creative way, in such an interesting way, that through these stories you really begin to enter the society, the everyday life of Israel in a way that you haven't before, and you can really connect emotionally to what happens here in a new way.
It sounds fantastic. Could you give us some examples of the stories?
So I went through their episodes. You can see their website. It's also in English, which is really cool. So I went through their episodes, and one episode that I really liked is called Stop the Bus. And it's 2 stories about buses, about things that happen on buses in Israel. And unfortunately and sadly, most of the time what we hear in the media about what happens on Israeli buses is, the horrific stories from terrorist bombing. Definitely. So here, finally, you get to hear an everyday story about Israeli life on buses. They tell about the central station in Tel Aviv, which apparently used to be the biggest one in the world until recently, and how weird it is, and how intricate it is, and how many different types of people you'll find there, and how big it is, and how messy, and how loud. It really, they call it a kind of microcosmos of Israel, this station. And you hear the stories of the people that they interview, and their complaints, and their feelings, and you really find, I think this is what I found about these stories that I heard, that the Israeli nation is really people who want to open their hearts. There's not a lot of pretense. They're very real. They're very direct, and they want to share their stories. They want to connect, and I think that's something that really kind of shone out to me in this project. Another example is they went to every street in Israel called Herzl Street, and there's 54
There's a lot of them.
There's 54 of them, actually, and interviewed people on Herzl Streets in Israel. Again, there was a butcher from Akko and a stoner in Tel Aviv, a young couple whose very dramatic tale is told in song. So it's really like a tapestry of differences, and that's the Israeli society. And these stories are so interesting and so moving and so creative. That they really tell the Israeli story in a different way. So I really recommend this website.
Definitely.
Just look for Israel Story on the website and you'll find it. And try to delve into Israel from an emotional perspective.
Definitely, and it sounds like from these examples, even the street example, that the same name of a street, you can find people from so many different walks of life in Israel. Really seems to be representative of the country.
Yeah, I mean, there's this one title, Israel, that I think most people know very certain things about, but really it contains so much more.
Sure.
And as a psychologist, I'd like to say that I think really what makes us happy at the end of the day are those moments when people open their hearts and share their story and find that something that they can find as mutual as a shared purpose, a shared story or theme that make them feel like they belong. And so what I see in this project that I told about and many others that I find that I'd like to bring to you is this effort. And I feel we are a nation that has a yearning to find this connection, that we're so diverse and we're so different, and yet there's something internal inside of us that's searching for that connection. I think that is a step into realizing what it is about this nation that is so special.
Definitely. Well, it's fascinating to hear about this research, and thank you so much for coming in today.
Well, it's my personal research, and I'd like to share more with you if possible, and thank you so much.
Muslims all over the world are celebrating Ramadan, and now Israeli paramedics are getting involved by helping bring food donations to needy Muslim families. Muslims in Israel have just begun celebrating the month of Ramadan, which is considered to be the Muslim holy month. For the holiday, observers fast during the day and only eat at night. While the holiday is traditionally observed by the Muslim community, Israeli paramedics are also joining in on the festivities by holding a food drive for needy families in the Arab village Baka al-Harbiyeh. The Israeli paramedic service Magen David Adom has already received over 500 meal donations. And an Arab volunteer in the project, Farid Abu Zakika, says he's shocked with the community's generosity. If you're asking why they're holding a food drive when Ramadan is known as a month of fasting, it's because Muslims traditionally hold festive meals at night when the fast ends each day, which the donations will help facilitate. Magen David Adom says it also helps needy families during the Jewish holidays, and that now, for the first time ever, they're also able to help needy Arab families during the Muslim holidays. The organization says its life-saving services are intertwined with Israelis of all faiths, and it looks like now its charitable efforts are too. From north to south, every city in Israel hides an incredible history, and one kibbutz has a special story to tell about its role in Israel's War of Independence. ILTV reporter Aaron Porst joins us from the kibbutz with more.
It's a hot and sunny day in central Israel, and today, ILTV's been invited to a special site. Kibbutz Givat Brenner is one of the first kibbutzim in Israel and hides an incredible story.
Givat Brenner took place in the Independence War, this way or another. We have to remember that Givat Brenner 1948-47 was on the southern border of Israel, which is not like now. So we had to keep all the way to Israel free. So the reason people thought about Givat Brenner and Givat Brenner area, very, very important place, is not to allow the Egyptian to go northern to Israel.
And how did this kibbutz play its part in the war? By using homing pigeons to become a central intelligence headquarters.
I think something in the 30s when they started looking for communication ways that the British, who had the British mandate here, couldn't intercept. And they were looking for something that would be more secretive. So Avraham Etz Hadar persuaded Ben Gurion and Galili to bring pigeons from Belgium. And he demonstrated them. He took them to the rooftop in Tel Aviv and sent a pigeon to Jerusalem, which it took about an hour and a half or 2 hours, and the pigeon got there.
No SMS, no telephone, no roads, no car, nothing. Those people then had to find all kinds of solutions, how to communicate people to people, especially when is in an era of battle.
And as if this method weren't tricky enough, it came with one major challenge.
A dove is a one-way communication. It only comes back to the dovecote it was born in. So you take them with a carrier, and you bring them from, say, Givat Brenner to Kibbutz Dorot in the Negev. And then when Dorot needs to say something to the headquarters in Givat Brenner, they send a pigeon with a note.
And it returns here.
And it returns here where it was born, yes.
Though incredibly risky, this method did yield amazing results. Messages included everything from quick status reports to urgent pleas for help. The exhibit features actual messages sent during the war and include one such plea which reads, quote, "At 8 a.m., there are many wounded and dead. We cannot last until the morning. Send immediate reinforcements and transport for evacuation. If you do not, we are lost," end quote. So as the years flew by and Israeli communications grew from pigeons to satellites, it was instead the war-era dovecotes that were lost, all but one. And thanks to the government's Landmarks program, it looks like this one's here to stay.
I have now over there is 20, and here about 12. It's 32, 33 pigeons.
There's nothing like first-hand experience. Holding a dove, sending it off, getting the mail, and seeing how it works. So that's what we did.
The Givat Brenner dovecote is host to a multitude of amazing demonstrations, alongside the many stories that lay waiting on the kibbutz grounds. Hopefully, everyone can get a chance to see them. This is Aaron Porras reporting for ILTV.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Today's word is mivchan, which means test in Hebrew. Kids all over the world are finishing up the school year and getting ready for summer. Unfortunately, that also means they probably have a mivchan or two that they need to finish first. The word mivchan is used in Hebrew to talk about a test or exam. And rest assured, children in Israel don't like tests any more than you do. For people studying in college, there's also a takufat mivchanim, or an exam period. You know, teachers always say that if you study hard, you'll succeed. But Israelis like to say that it all depends on the mivchana emetziut, or test of time. Regardless of how you do on your finals, we hope you're all as ready for summer as we are. On that note, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Today it's 85 and sunny in Tel Aviv, but tomorrow it should cool down with a high of 80 degrees. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.83 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to check out our evening update every night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for watching, and see you tonight.